a baby hidden in a basket, a prince raised in a palace that enslaved his people, a fugitive who ran from everything he was, only to be stopped by a bush that burned but never turned to ash. This is the story of Moses. And before God ever parted the Red Sea, he first had to break the man who thought he could save Israel on his own. Egypt, the most powerful empire on earth, and at its heart, a Pharaoh who had grown afraid. The children of Israel had multiplied so greatly that Pharaoh looked at them and saw a threat. So he crushed them with labor, bricks without straw, backs bent under the Egyptian sun. But the more he oppressed them, the more they grew. So Pharaoh did something darker. He gave a command to the midwives. Every Hebrew boy born must be thrown into the Nile, into a river of death. But one mother refused to let her son be swallowed by fear. Jochebed looked at her baby boy and saw something worth protecting. For 3 months, she hid him. And when she could hide him no longer, she made a basket of papyrus reeds. She sealed it with tar and pitch. And with trembling hands, she placed her son in the very river Pharaoh had turned into a grave. She didn't abandon him. She entrusted him to God. And God was watching. Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe at the river. She saw the basket among the reeds. She opened it, and a baby cried. Scripture says her heart was moved with compassion. Even in the house of the enemy, God had placed a woman whose heart could not ignore a crying child. She named him Moses, because, she said, I drew him out of the water, and through a plan only God could write. Moses' own mother was brought in to nurse him. The boy destined to deliver Israel was raised in the very palace that enslaved them, educated in all the wisdom of Egypt, trained in its courts, powerful, privileged, and yet, carrying a question he could not silence. Who am I really? One day, Moses went out among his people. He saw their suffering, not from a distance, not as a prince observing subjects, but as a man whose blood ran the same as theirs. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. Something rose up in him. He looked left. He looked right. And he killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. He thought no one had seen. The next day, he tried to break up a fight between 2 Hebrew men, and one of them said words that stopped him cold. Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? It was out. The secret was out. And when Pharaoh heard it, he sought to kill Moses. So Moses ran. The prince of Egypt fled into the wilderness, from marble floors to desert sand, from royal robes to the life of a shepherd. He crossed into Midian, sat down by a well, and his whole identity collapsed around him. He had tried to be Israel's deliverer, on his own terms, in his own strength, by his own hand, and it had cost him everything. In Midian, Moses met a priest named Jethro. He married his daughter Zipporah. He became a shepherd, tending flocks on the backside of the desert, as far from Egypt and ambition as a man could get. 40 years passed. 40 years of silence. 40 years of obscurity. The man who had been raised to rule was now following sheep. But God was not finished. God was not absent. He was doing something in the wilderness that the palace never could. He was emptying Moses of Moses, breaking down the self-reliance, the pride, the idea that Israel's freedom depended on one man's strength. Because when God finally moved, he would need a vessel, not a hero. One ordinary day, Moses was leading the flock to Horeb, the mountain of God. And he saw it, a bush on fire, flames licking the branches. But the bush was not burning up. It was not being consumed. Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. And the moment he turned, God called his name. Moses, Moses. Here I am, he answered. Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moses hid his face. He was afraid to look at God. And then God spoke words that changed everything. I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry. I know their sorrows. And I have come down to deliver them. 80 years of preparation. 40 in a palace. 40 in a desert. And now, standing barefoot before a burning bush, the deliverer was finally ready. Not because he was strong, but because he had learned that God was stronger. The bush that burned but did not die was a picture of Moses himself. tried by fire, refined, but not destroyed. God looked at this broken shepherd and said, "Come now, therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." The prince had become a shepherd, and the shepherd was about to become a deliverer. God didn't choose Moses despite his broken journey. He chose him because of it. The palace gave him understanding of the enemy. The wilderness gave him humility before God. And the burning bush gave him a mission he could never accomplish alone, which was exactly the point. If you feel like you've been sidelined, if the wilderness seems to have no end, if everything you built has crumbled, maybe God is not punishing you. Maybe he's preparing you. Because the deliverer was never Moses. It was always God, working through a man who finally knew it.